Awesome. Thank you all. Are you excited to be here? Right? Hey, I didn't really hear anything. Are you guys excited to be here? Yeah, there we go. All right. So I like to jump into these things right away with some collaboration. So we're going to do an exercise actually to start out. So what I want you to do is I want you to find a partner. Could be a neighbor, someone right next to you, ideally someone you don't know. And I want you to introduce yourself. Share a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, that kind of fun stuff. But I need you to answer 2 questions in the process. First question is, from your experience, what's one benefit of remote teamwork? I'm not talking about work, I'm talking about teamwork. And also, what's one challenge of remote teamwork? All right? So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, find your buddy, have that conversation, and then we can talk about it. Go for it.
What's one benefit?
One benefit, flexibility.
For those coming in, find a buddy, answer these questions. Let's get to know each other. This is what this is all about, right? All right, keep talking. Find those benefits. What are those challenges? Share your thoughts. We've got about a little over a minute left. If you're just coming in, don't be shy. Find a partner. Introduce yourself. Ask these questions. All right, clap once if you can hear my voice. Clap twice if you can hear my voice. Clap 3 times if you can hear my voice. Clap 4 times if you can hear my voice. They're still talking. There you go. There you go. Awesome. Thank you for coming back in. I love that because it works both with adults and with children, both ways. So here, I want to hear about some of the things you talked about, and I just want you to shout it out. So when we talk about the benefits of remote teamwork, what are some of those benefits? Just shout them out. Diversity. What other things? Say that again. Flexibility. What else? Freedom. All right, how about some challenges? What were some of the challenges of remote teamwork? Say that again. Communication. What other ones? Promotion bias. Time zones, right? Oh, that's a near and dear one to me. So these are things that, again, in teams we deal with. And so a lot of what I want to talk about today is going to be around the team-centric angle of remote. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I actually started my remote journey in 2019. I started with an organization, and from there, I was nervous. I was excited at the same time. I was joining a team of about 30 people, all over the world, all different time zones. And let me tell you what, it was an amazing experience. I mean, these were my people. These were the folks that I just loved coming into work every day. We supported each other. We thrived with each other. And honestly, we were in the middle of a pandemic. We helped each other survive that. And it was one of those things where I thought, man, if this is what remote work is like, I want more of this. This is great. So for me, this is definitely one of the best teams I've had a chance to work with in my career. And so I kept the good times rolling. I went and I joined a new team a little later on. And this was a smaller team, 4 or 5 people on this team. But it was with a bunch of veterans from my organization. People have been around the block. They know how we work and essentially how we work in a remote way. And the cool thing was we had a mission. We had a great mission. We had support from leadership. We had freedom to do what we needed to accomplish that goal. Coming from a corporate world in my past life, I thought, wow, this is a dream. This is everything I wanted. And I was right at some level. It was a dream, but it was actually more of a nightmare kind of dream. Time zones, I heard that. Such a challenge for us. We couldn't figure out how to collaborate. We couldn't figure out how to communicate. We had a goal, but you know what? We weren't aligned on the outcomes. We kept missing each other along the way. And although we wanted to be that dream team of distributed teamwork, we were ultimately just a bunch of individuals. And as someone who's always focused on teamwork, focused on how we work better together, honestly, I cringed every day I came in. I was like, oh God, what the hell are we doing wrong here? There's gotta be something better. What could we fix? I just kept going back to that old adage, the cobbler's kids never have shoes, It's like, we know how to do this, but we don't know how to do this. And it took some reflection to actually eventually find out that the reason why we weren't successful within this group had to do with the fact that we didn't have intentional ways of working for our distributed team. We are 4 or 5 of us. We thought we knew what we were doing. We made assumptions with our own perspective, but we didn't actually come up with how we wanted to work. We know where each other worked, but we didn't know why we worked. We didn't know how we worked. We didn't make any of that explicit. And so it's because of scenarios like this that I've kind of taken a little bit of a controversial stand in that, honestly, I don't give a shit about remote work. I actually think that I'll never work in an office again. I don't want to. But the problem is based on my experience, whether I'm in the office or I'm in remote, I can have good teams and I can have bad teams. And the thing is, I actually care about something else. I care about distributed work, and there's a difference. So to me, remote work is very much about the individual. It's about giving ourselves that freedom, that ability to go and live our best life. Distributed work, on the other hand, is saying, hey, we're part of a system. We're one of many. We got to figure out how we work together, because that's the thing that falls apart. Yeah, we could be living our best life here in Lisbon, working from the beach, but if we log into work and just dread it every day because this team of mine, it's just not working, are we really living our best lives? Now, the thing is about distributed work is it's not a sexy thing. Remote work is sexy. We hear about the battle for remote. It's almost like this David and Goliath thing that's going on right now. Every return to office memo we see out there, it's one more thing saying, check out, we got to fight for the little guys, got to get that remote going. And the thing is, we hear about that from a lot of other trends too. Things like that great resignation that we're still kind of going through. We heard about this from Ryan, quiet quitting, bare minimum Mondays, try less Tuesdays. I can't wait to see what Wednesday brings us at this point. But the thing is I'm not saying these aren't real, because they feel real, right? They feel like we're actually being impacted on these. What I'm saying, though, is that these aren't the trends in modern work we should be focused on right now. These aren't the things that are actually guiding us. To me, they're actually more of lagging indicators or lagging trends. They're the outcome of things that we actually should be focused on. And I know this because at Atlassian, we've spent a ton of time focusing on teamwork. Now, many of you know us for our products, things like Jira, things like Confluence, things like Trello. I saw that on Ryan's slide, so excited to see that. But the thing is we've been obsessed with this idea of teamwork since the beginning. And it's not just how teams work, but what's holding teams back, what's pushing them forward, kind of going back to our mission statement. Honestly, how do we unleash those teams? And we care so much about it that we've actually invested in our whole research team to go out to the world and find out, how do teams work? What are the things? What are the ingredients out there? And they're not just looking at Atlassian customers, they're looking at the ecosystem. And the cool thing is we've actually taken their data and we've started to publish it out online. And we put it in what we call our State of Teams report. Now, this is a biannual report that shares insights, essentially what we're learning out there in terms of how teams are working. It focuses on all sorts of topics, one of them being this idea of team health, which is really important to us. Team health for us is made up of a couple attributes. It's a connection between things like engagement at work, performance at work, that culture, that environment we work in, as well as sustainability. Our latest reports are also showing that it's not doing so hot right now. Team health, right now, 13% of teams are actually considered healthy. That means these are teams that are actually hitting that mark. And the worst part about that is it's going down year over year. Now, we also went and we looked at some of the trends. We wanted to find out, how do the trends work? Are there merit to those, or is it just fluff out there? And so one of the things we decided to look at in 2021 was this idea of, all right, remote work, hybrid work in office. Does that have an impact on this idea of team health? And you know what we found? Uh-oh, now you're going to know what it found. There we go. No impact. No real impact. Honestly, a hybrid team and a remote team, yeah, they're a little bit more healthy, but by all means, it's not significant. It's nothing that's saying, wow, this is the thing. This is what solves it. And it just goes back to my point earlier. Remote work seems like it is the trend to focus on, but is it really resulting in better teams? Which in the end of the day, that's what gets shit done. And so for me, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about here. So we run this report, and there's great trends that we pull out every time we run it. And so I want to share with you essentially the 3 key trends that I've actually seen out of our report that I think are the most fascinating. I think are the leading trends that we need to focus on that'll actually fix things in the long term. Now, I'm a pragmatic guy, And so what I like to do is I like to introduce some tips and tricks that you can do tomorrow to hopefully take advantage of these and actually not be a statistic in these trends in the future. So let's actually take a look at some of these. So the first one I've got has to do with work and where we work, but not in the way you think. And it's this idea that although team health is not necessarily tied to location, what we did find is that team health is based on workplace flexibility. It's having the ability to choose where you work, how you work. It's given that freedom. At Atlassian, we have offices around the world, but we're a distributed company. I might choose to go into an office one day for some team collaboration time, but then the rest of the week I'm going to work remote or maybe from a co-working space. The idea is it's my choice, and that's what matters. We actually see a ton of benefits with this too. So some of the things that we see is things like reduced burnout. We see improved team innovation. And here's the kicker. We actually have a much more positive outlook at our organization, right? We actually like our company more. Who would have thought? Now, here at Atlassian, we actually have a model around flexible working that we call Team Anywhere. And you'll actually get to hear from our head of Team Anywhere tomorrow as part of a panel, Annie Dean. So I'm just going to give you a taste of it today. So Team Anywhere came about August of 2020. Our founders wrote a blog in Confluence. And of course, announcing that says, hey, the world has changed. We need to change too. And so they founded this idea of Team Anywhere. And Team Anywhere is built on this idea of how do we allow team members to work where they want to work, have that flexibility, but at the same time, keep that connection as teams, have that distributed model to actually support that. And so this is an actual team. It is a part of our organization. And they focus on everything from things like Talent Anywhere, which is all about how do we unlock countries around the world from a tax and legal perspective to enable people to work there, as well as let us hire from there. They work us on things like work flexibility, which is around practices and tools. We brought in tools like Loom to help us create connection when we're distributed. And then also just reimagining the base foundation of teamwork. So I want to give you some context in terms of what we looked like a few years ago to tell you how big this is for us. So back in 2019, this is how we were distributed around the world. We were about 3,000 people at the time, and we were around our major offices. You can see we had East to West Coast. You got the West Coast or the East Coast of Australia. You got Central Europe. This is where our team members were. But then all of a sudden, things started to change. August 2020 comes around, we launch Team Anywhere, and people start to move rapidly. They start moving different cities, different countries. We go to things like, we start moving to places like Boise or Melbourne or any of these locations, and all of a sudden, 4 years later, we're sitting at an organization of 10,000 people working around the world. And what's really neat, 40% of those individuals live more than 2 hours away from an office. That means they don't go into the office every day, but there are people who choose to do that. Now, for us, this is awesome. It's a great story, but the thing is we still have our struggles. When we try to connect around the world, there are still issues that pop up, and this is where Team Anywhere comes into play. It helps us build out, what are those practices? And so for us, we've actually built out our own internal guidebook for this. We actually call it the Team Anywhere Guidebook. It gives you things like practices. How do you connect with people? How do you collaborate? How do you create those connections that allow you to get work done? It gives you practices, like practical things teams can do internally to do this. Now, we wouldn't be honoring our mission statement around unleashing every team if we just kept this to ourselves. So if you haven't heard about it, we're also putting this stuff out on the Atlassian Team Playbook. So the Atlassian Team Playbook is a free resource online to anybody that includes 50 practices that we do internally to help ourselves both work day to day as well as in the long term with planning and how we do it in a distributed way. You could be doing everything from how do you have better hygiene around your meetings to roles and responsibilities. Now, for me, there's one of these plays that I actually think every remote team should have. And so coming out of here, I want all of you to go and run this play if you don't have this. And it's this idea of a working agreement. So one of the things I found in my career is that many times we make assumptions around how we work. And it's those assumptions on a team that cause things like the frictions we're seeing with remote work. And a working agreement is a great way to solve that. It's a contract within a team. It's bringing those remote aspects, the individual pieces, and actually creating distributed work. It's creating a team environment. Maybe it's about communication patterns. Maybe it's about the meetings we have. Maybe it's about how we want to celebrate each other. The whole goal is to make that explicit. I like to say it's making the implicit explicit. So go out there, run that. I've run hundreds of these, and I can say everything from a software team to an HR team to a C-suite, they all say the same thing. They come out saying, wow, we needed that. That was like, we said a lot of things that I didn't realize that were kind of being held back there. So great play to run, 60 minutes. I recommend doing it. All right, so let's go to trend number 2. So trend number 2 is something that I don't think gets enough attention in the right way because it impacts all of us. And it has to do with meetings. I'm sure all of us declined some meetings so we can be here today. And some of us are probably taking some meetings later today and tomorrow. We're heading over to the co-working space. But the thing is with meetings is I bet we've all been on those that we think afterwards, boy, that could have been a Slack message. That could have been an email. Or worst of all, that could have been nothing because I still don't know why I was invited to that session. It had nothing to do with me, right? I think we all feel that at some level right here, huh? So the trend, we're seeing that, bad meetings are sucking away our time, but they're also doing another thing. Bad meetings are actually resulting in more burnout in our employees. So what we're finding from our data is that the more meetings you have, the higher rate of burnout you're experiencing. If you have more than 20 hours of meetings a week, you're 35% more likely to experience burnout. And if you work remotely, you're likely to have 60% more meetings than colleagues who are working in the office. And that's a scary thing. Now, we could go all there and say, you know what? Let's just cancel the meetings. We don't need them. Let's just cancel them. And it's really easy to cancel meetings. It's really hard to do it the right way. And here's what I mean. A lot of times you've been hearing in the news, groups that are going out there and saying, like, we're just going to cancel all the meetings. Like, no more meetings. It's a rule now. You got to use Slack. You got to use async ways. Awesome. But the thing is when we do that, a meeting is just a tool. It's not actually a practice. It's something that is there to facilitate something. So those things still have to happen. And over time, what you start seeing is a gradual decline back into meetings, being like, all right, no one's looking. Can we get together and meet? Because that's all I know how to do. I don't know anything else. And so give it about a year with some of these announcements, and I bet the calendar looks about the same. And it has to do with the fact that, again, meetings are tools. They're not practices. We actually have to change the way we get that work done to actually eliminate meetings. And let me give you a story about what this looks like. So I was working with a customer of ours, a big telecom customer in the US, and they had this big meeting. I think 50 people, senior level people, they get paid a lot of money, coming together for 2 hours every Friday, and 1 or 2 people are talking. Kind of look like this, It's this big room, everyone's getting together. And this was an in-person company too. And the thing is the main facilitator said, oh, this is a good meeting because I got to share a lot of information. I got to make sure everyone knows about stuff. But then you ask the participants and they're like, this is a waste of time. Like, I hate being here. This is not the way I want to spend my Fridays. And so I sat in on a couple of these meetings because I work with our customers to help them with these practices. And I sat down with the facilitator and says, hey, I think we can try some things to change this up. The first thing we did is we said, you know what, there's a lot of information that gets shared here that I think we could probably do more async. Let's establish some practices, some policies around types of information that we share. Saying, hey, corporate announcements, those should go on a blog somewhere. If you have other more non-pressing needs, share them out through a Confluence page. Do something like that to be able to get the information out there. Now, if you have a topic that you want to talk about that actually needs discussion, you actually want to do stuff, what we need to do is we need to have a structured way of bringing it in. We have to have dedicated time. Wait, we need an agenda, right? Novel. This was literally a meeting that they didn't have an agenda. It was all in here. It says, let's be explicit about this. And so we did. We set up the agenda, time boxes, speakers, topics. And after trying this out with these kind of things for about a month, we started to see some things happen. First thing that happened is that 2-hour meeting turned into a 1-hour meeting because guess what? All of a sudden, we got much more intentional with our time. Those announcements weren't being talked about, and then those time boxes were being honored. All of a sudden, we're getting through our topics in time. It's awesome. But then another thing happened. Half the participants stopped attending. Now, sometimes you might be feeling like, well, isn't that a bad thing? It's like, no, it's actually a good thing because half the participants didn't have to be there. What was happening before is these individuals would go in and they'd come to the meeting because they didn't know what was going to be talked about. They didn't want to be the person where the senior leader said, hey, where's so-and-so? I want to talk about X. No one wants to be in that spot. And so now that we're sending out an agenda beforehand, all of a sudden people are going through and says, oh, do I need to be here? No, I don't. And thus we're saving their time. Now, I'm not saying we beat the burnout problem with this company, but what we did do is we made their Friday mornings a whole lot better. Now, the thing is if we would have just canceled this meeting, I can guarantee you that in 6 months later, that leader, that owner of this, would have found some way to bring it back because they didn't have a need that was being satisfied. They didn't change their practices to solve the issue. Now, if you're struggling with any sort of practices around your meetings, I do want to give you another resource you can try. And so at Atlassian, we've gotten really intentional about how we run our meetings. I mean, that's what we share with our customers. And so we actually put out a free course on YouTube. You can go out there, it's 30 minutes, and it just shares a bunch of tips and tricks for how you can run a better meeting. Because honestly, like simple things like that are what change the world. And so for us, it'll share with you everything from how do you prep to how do you take down and all the things in between. So great facilitation tips. If you take this and use it, I'm guaranteeing you that the attendees in your meetings are going to thank you at the end of the day. All right, so let's go on to the third and final trend here. And this is an emerging trend. This is one that the data for this is brand new. It hasn't even been released yet. So we got to keep this on the DL. I don't want to tell my boss that I'm sharing this out there. And it has to do with what I would consider the underpinning of work in general. And it's this idea of engagement. And the finding we're having here is that without engaged workforce, nothing else matters. Nothing. Freedom to work wherever I want. Nope. Good salary. Nope. Engagement is what matters. So when we actually started doing the research around this, we gathered a bunch of data points around what did people like and what didn't they like about their remote working. And we had some findings. So from this, we had a number of downsides that people were reporting back about their experience on remote, and it was a lot. Things that worried us, things like rated their culture poor, things like they felt more likely to quit. I mean, they didn't have a work friend anymore either. These are things that, as a distributed first company, we were concerned about, and we thought, well, this doesn't seem right. Like this can't be what we're seeing. And so we said, let's look at the data. So we worked with our PhDs, those scientists. We said, let's look at this data and find out what might be resulting in this. And so one of the ideas came up and says, well, what if we looked at engagement? This is one of those 4 attributes, remember, in team health. And we said, well, what if we controlled for it? What if we said, what would the downsides be if we didn't, or if we're only engaged employees? What would those be? So we ran the numbers. And that's what we found. There's no glitch on the screen. They all went away. If you were an engaged employee, you didn't experience or report back any of those issues. Blew our mind. We're like, yes, because guess what? I think intrinsically we all know this. We all know that if you're engaged, all of a sudden you're feeling the love at work. Now, the thing that we found that actually brings this out the most is a simple thing of connection. Connection is that mortar that is the cohesion for our alignment within our teams, the thing that brings us together. And for Atlassian, we actually have been focusing on this for the last 12 months. And one of the things particularly here we rolled out last fall is this idea of a program called intentional togetherness. So intentional togetherness is just that. We want to be really intentful about the time we spend together. And we want to be it as humans. We want to do things, whether it be remote or in person. We want to get to know each other on a personal level. And maybe you're an Atlassian team and you want to get together in person and do something. Awesome, we'll support you. Maybe you want to get together for a virtual happy hour. Awesome. Or maybe for me, like I'm out of Detroit, Michigan. I have about 20 Atlassians in my area. We like to get together for drinks every now and then. I'm connecting with my fellow colleagues. The whole idea is that connection. Now, one of the teams I've worked with, my current team, we actually got together in Sydney, Australia for some intentional togetherness earlier this year. And 4 days, and you want to know what we did? We got to know each other. We took long walks around Sydney Harbor. We ate a ton of food. Yeah, we did a little bit of work, but we focused on the things that are hard to do when you're remote. It's building relationships and trust. And the benefits from that time together have paid spades since we've left. We're more connected as a team. We're more aligned on our goals. And honestly, I feel more invested in my team members than ever before. And the thing is if you're struggling with this, if you're struggling with this connection, it doesn't mean you have to fly everyone to Sydney to spend 4 days gallivanting around. You can do little things. And one of the things I want to share with you is this idea of a user manual. It's another one of our plays out of our playbook, and it's probably my favorite play because I think it brings this connection to life. And the whole idea is it's getting your instructions out there. We share about how we work, what are our hours? Where do we live? How do we like to give feedback? But we also share how we live. What am I passionate about? What do I love? What do I hate? What pisses me off? What are the things out there that people should care about? And the idea is you build these out and then you go share them with each other. I actually have teams that they'll do this and they'll build out their user manuals. They'll put it on their homepage. So that way when new team members come, all of a sudden they say, oh, cool, I know who Joe is, or I know who Jane is. I can learn about these folks. And so for me, if you want to build connection, it is as simple as spending an hour filling out a user manual. All right, so I'm looking at my time and it says 0 at this point. So I know Danny's gonna be coming up to the stage. Where is he? Yeah, he's gonna be coming up soon. So I need to close this thing out. I thought my mic was getting cut there for a second. I was like, oh man, this is like the Oscars. So the thing I want to leave you with is I don't want us to be a trend here. And what I mean by this is that a lot of times you go to these events and you get super excited, you're jazzed, you're like, man, this is awesome. And we go back and we do jack about it. We don't change the way we work, and that's dysfunctional. We know what we've got to do, we're not applying it. It's me deciding this morning not to go to the gym when my alarm went off. That's dysfunctional. So don't be like that. And so what I want you to do is I have an ask for you coming out of today. I shared with you 3 things you can do. 3 things you can do tomorrow or Thursday or Friday, whenever you get back to your team. And I want you to pick one of those to do. So you can go build a working agreement with your team. Take that hour, figure out how you become intentful about how you work in a distributed way. You can go out there and watch that course on better meetings. It takes 30 minutes. You could probably do it in your cab ride to the airport if you're flying out. Do that and make that next meeting a little bit better for your team members. Or create your user manual. Share it out with the crowd. Share it out with your team. So that way, all of a sudden, people feel comfortable exposing a little bit about themselves and connecting. And remember here, y'all, you're the key to making this happen. This is why we're here. We're the ones that are going to help. No one else is coming. No help is coming. We are the help. So we've got to go out and try the things. We've got to experiment. We've got to do the little things. And so that means you've got to go do that. So try those things out. So with that said, that's all I've got, folks. Thank you so much for the time. And I hope you enjoy the conference.